Well, hi there. My name is Myles Wakeham. I'm here to tell you why I think purchasing power matters. I'm here in the beautiful town of San Miguel de Allende in the central heart of Mexico as I talk to you about this. But this isn't some sort of travel vlog or my adventures in Central America or anything like that. This is a frank discussion that we all need to have about money. The reality is that for you and I, if we've been raised in the Western world, or you live in a country like the United States or Canada or the UK or somewhere like that, or Australia where I'm originally from, you probably were sold a bill of goods when you were a kid. Your parents probably told you that you should study hard and graduate and go out there, get a degree, work hard, save your money, and then one day you can retire when you're 65. And I think, unfortunately, in the United States, the vast majority of people have realized that that doesn't work. 78% of people, according to Forbes magazine, are living paycheck to paycheck every month. Their ability to save any money whatsoever for any adverse event or even their retirement is minimal. They rely on government-provided programs like Social Security and some sort of a Medicare way of getting out of life where they shirk the responsibility of these things from themselves to their government, only to find out that the very same government is telling them that their life expectancy is dropping, not increasing. Where the CDC is saying that your life expectancy is going to be 75 years, and that you probably won't be able to get your Social Security out in any meaningful way until you're 67. Do the math. Not much left there. The reality is that we all go through life needing money. We need it to survive. We need it for our food, our shelter, our clothing, our healthcare, our transportation, our communications. We need it for our livelihood. Many of us go through life living in this sort of illusion that if we just earn more, if we just work harder, that maybe that's our hope. If we can get it in excess of our expenses, that maybe then we can actually save our money and we have a chance at survival when we're no longer able to work. But if you then go to the very same financial gurus out there, the pundits, the personal finance experts, they're going to tell you something along the lines of, you need $2 million to retire. Who has that? I mean, really, the average person, sure, there are always going to be the rich and famous out there among us, and I'm sure we'd all always love to be that sort of a person, but that's a lottery which rarely it gets won. At the end of the day, the average person is part of that 78% paycheck to paycheck crowd, and hearing those sort of stories is just one big form of depression. So consequently, people look to trying to scale back, and they look to the most important thing that they've got, and that's the value of their dollar, their purchasing power. But the reality is that before they realize it, they often find it's too late. They sold their future out to a banking mortgage, a mortgage which by the very definition of its French translation translates to death contract. Yeah, the banks want you to pay them interest until the day you die. And unfortunately, that banking class with that sort of immoral, and I would say evil approach to life, to ensnare you, to shackle you, to constrain you, has rolled all the way through to our government, in which the central bankers now underwrite the government with massive amounts of debt that it could never potentially pay off. And the only way our government has to try to make that debt manageable is to reduce your buying power of that very same currency. By diluting the value of the currency and infusing more and more of it into the economy, the dollar goes down and down in value. So consequently, in 1920, $1 there, if we compare that to 100 years later, so the dollar of let's say 2020 has a buying power of what a dollar of what 3 cents would have had in 1920. And we call that inflation. The very same government, the very same central banks that are talking to us about these numbers are telling us inflation actually doesn't exist, that inflation isn't meaningful, that they have this, quote, target inflation rate of like 2%, where your value of your dollar goes down 2% every single year. But you and I know this is fiction, because we're the ones who get the rent, a contract agreement renewal and find our rent went up 10% or 20%. We're the ones who go to the grocery store and try and buy a steak and it's $56 for a basic steak. We're the ones who go to the gas pump and it's $5 a gallon for gas. We're the ones who see our healthcare premiums going up and up and up. We know that this is a lie. We know that we as a community are being lied to. And the only way that we have hope to get past all of this is to band together and do some sort of open source intelligence on what the real value of our dollar is, what our real purchasing power is. And we find out very quickly that it's minimal. So I don't mean to bring somebody down here. I'm not trying to make it depressing, because I know that we all have a life journey, and that's unique to all of us. And we should be free to pursue it in whatever manner we want. But I can tell you that if you're being shackled by the banking class and by your government and by the lies of inflation, that you will have no hope no matter how much money you make. God forbid you actually do have a chance to save money, but you put it back into that very same banking industry and you'll see interest rates in the 0.09% category. Come on, let's get real here. All right, so how do we solve this problem? Well, why am I here in Mexico? Well, I'll tell you this. If you look beyond your borders for where your dollar will go furthest, you will be pleasantly surprised. You will find that outside of the United States, your dollar stretches a lot further. Here in Mexico, the peso is currently at 20-1 to the US dollar, and you can live down here like a king for about $1,500 a month. Yeah, that might seem surprising, but it's why so many of the baby boomers in the United States who find that their Social Security checks are not going to cover them in any way for their retirement, they come here. In this town in San Miguel de Allende, where I am right now, there are over 20,000 expats. These are Americans, Canadians, people from the UK, Australia, Europe. They're all from everywhere else where they could not make their money work, where their purchasing power that certainly mattered to them failed them. They came here and they found for $1,500 a month they can live like a king. Rent's cheap. Food is incredible. Farm to table cooking and very affordable. This is a place where you actually have a chance. But the most important thing I want to talk to you about is probably the biggest line item that we all have on our personal finance expenses, and that's healthcare. And very few of us actually realize this. But if you look at any corporate job these days, or any regular everyday job, the average employer is paying approximately $20,000 US in the United States, contributing to health insurance for their employees as a way to try to shackle and keep their employees employed in the company. People can't leave their jobs because they may have a pre-existing condition, or they can't afford the medical care outside, they can't afford the healthcare premiums, so they stay in their job, a job they hate. Well, their years, their one and only life is sort of disappearing before their eyes because they cannot afford to leave their job. That's not a healthy way to live a life. That's pure enslavement. And we cannot allow that to happen. Our government doesn't provide a solution for this either, because the medical cartel is in league with the very same government to have a pricing for medical care in the United States that is literally 10 times higher than what you would find in other countries. The answer isn't to have Medicare for all or government-provided healthcare. The answer is to provide affordable and quality healthcare which you and I can participate in, that we don't have to sell our soul to get. And that's why I actually came to Mexico. Back in 2018, I was carrying a 25-year-old injury, a broken shoulder, a shoulder that came from a motor vehicle accident I had in Australia. I was told over and over again and denied coverage because it was a pre-existing condition. I couldn't afford to go for any sort of Obamacare type policy in the United States because I earned too much. And in the end, the policy would have cost me nearly $2,700 a month for my family. Consequently, I did what most people do when they can't afford to get medical care on an elective procedure. They don't get it done. So I carried for 20 odd years disability. The same would be true of somebody with a bad hip or a bad knee, that they don't choose to get these things taken care of because either they can't afford the copay, they can't afford the deductible, they can't afford to time off work. But the reality is these things get worse and worse and worse, and eventually they turn into adverse events, and they really are in an emergency situation with these things. I chose not to do that. I reached out to the medical community in the United States and I was given quotes of about $150,000 to have my shoulder fixed. It was quite a complicated operation. Well, who has $150,000 of cash to give to the medical cartel? And at the end of the day, what's to say it wasn't going to be $300,000 because they found some unexpected thing or they started jacking the price? Because let's face it, that's what they do. So what did I do? Well, I went to Mexico. I went to Guadalajara particularly. I researched it and I ended up getting the entire shoulder rebuilt, a total shoulder replacement, including prosthetic, a team of 7 medical professionals, surgeons, anesthesiologists, nursing staff, assistants and so on, and full hospital stay for the entire total sum of $9,000 US. And when I found that it was the best quality care I've ever had in my life, in medicine, I started telling other people about it. But they didn't believe me. Or they thought that there were dangers or that some cartel would get them and behead them on their way to the hospital. It's not true. The reality is we're fed a pack of lies, just as we are in our social mantra, that enslaves us and makes us scared to reach outside of our borders where our purchasing power really goes a long way. So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to give you here is hope. That if you find yourself in a difficult situation where your costs are going up and up and up, your grocery store bills continue to go up, your cost at the gas pump is going up all the time, your telephone bills keep going up, your medical insurance premiums keep going up, and you feel that this isn't a life, that this isn't your security, and that you want the best for your family and the ability to retire, the ability to live a dignified life, that you can do it, but you may have to look outside of your borders. I've done that since a young age. I've traveled the world. It's worked out well for me. I'm sure there are always going to be situations where it didn't work out for somebody, but at the end of the day, we all have the responsibility to ourselves, to our families, to at least try. This is why baby boomers find Mexico as the #1 retirement destination going forward. And surprisingly, it is easy to get residency here. Very easy. I just received my own permanent residency and it cost me less than $1,000 between the cost of government fees, applications, and an attorney to do it all. It was not difficult. So if any of this information gives you hope, I hope it does, and it gives you some sort of a sense that maybe there is a chance out there for you and your family, why don't you come over to our website over at beunconstrained.com. Follow me over on social media. You'll find me at @beunconstrained. But additionally, come and take a listen to our podcast. I do a podcast every week called the Unconstrained Podcast, in which I delve deeply into these issues and I try to find solutions using open source intelligence on how we can actually break free of this bankster and government shackled world we've found ourselves enslaved in. Purchasing power matters. It matters a lot. It's not what you earn, it's what you keep. And if you focus on that, you might just have a chance. But maybe you may have to break free of the artificial borders we put around our world and our lives and get a little more creative. I hope it helps you out. Again, I'm Myles Wakeham. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you over at beunconstrained.com. Thanks.